El radioarte es la inspiración que se le presenta al oyente que escucha para que pueda configurar un escenario propio. Se apela mucho al aspecto subjetivo del radialista, de la persona que elabora esta pieza. Debe ser armónico, es decir, sonar bien. Es un género totalmente libre en su construcción.
Totalmente libre en su construcción.
Radio art is the invitation that we make to the receiver,
the radio listener.
Time to influence
the space of their own. We
appeal to the person who creates the piece, the artist's subjectivity. It has to be harmonic.
Los ingredientes con los que vamos a trabajar son los elementos del lenguaje de la radio. Música, con efecto, con la voz, la palabra y con el silencio.
It has to sound good. It is a completely free genre when it comes to framework.
Música, con efecto, con la voz, la palabra y con el silencio.
There is no rigid diagram or structure that allow us to design radio art. You're listening to the noise, the message.
Para una mejor escucha, recomendamos el uso de auriculares.
It's really wonderful to be on this station. So I usually describe myself as a singer and a sound artist, and my work falls into many categories. I do concerts, installations, workshops, sound walks. And I live in New York, but I'm originally from London and the UK, born in the UK. And what else can I tell you about myself? I generally use just voice, electronics, field recordings, and such like. And I can probably fill it out more if you'd like to ask questions, or I can keep talking.
4410, 4420, 5430, 5464, 74. Major problems that I have when I was teenager and a kid, because this is a very lonely bridge. So this shows how bad the infrastructure is, because there is no place where you can run if something happens. So the most of rapes and assaults happen in bridges.
Really? Wow.
And as you see, it's too loud that if you scream, nobody will listen to you.
It's true.
There is no way to run.
My sound searches. Yeah. Can you say just a bit more about what you mean?
What are your sound search?
Well, my sources vary hugely because sometimes my sources are other people's walks. I think you're probably aware of shadow walks, and I'm sure I'll talk more about those later. But where I'm not really choosing the walk, I'm going on the walk that they took me, but I'm going on it by myself. And so I'm not really seeking out sounds. I'm just recording. It's a kind of a different approach, but I'm also singing my memory of their walk. So in that sense, I'm just kind of letting the sounds happen. I'm not exactly searching for them. But, what you're saying about listening on a bus and suddenly being very interested in the sounds, I think that's so crucial. I mean, I was trained by Pauline Oliveros, as you probably know, and I teach deep listening now. And one of her stories is that she started listening to the world and the environment when her mother gave her a tape recorder. This is way back, so this was really a reel-to-reel tape recorder. So Pauline Oliveros tells the story of when she was very young, her mother bought her a tape recorder, and she just set it to record. And when she played it back, she was amazed to find how many sounds were recorded that she hadn't heard. And so she resolved from that day kind of thing that her practice was going to be to listen all the time to everything, no matter what she was doing. And she pretty well kept that one up, till she was 84. So and I wouldn't say I've managed that, but I do find when I lead sound walks and when I go on listening walks myself, how welcome all the sounds are, and maybe normally would be quite irritating, like, a truck kind of suddenly beeps a horn, or someone walks past you with a mobile phone. And those things that are quite annoying normally when I'm not focused on listening suddenly become, oh yes, there's something happening there, and they become really interesting and enjoyable. And I think learning, first of all, learning deep listening really helped. Well, it completely was one of the things that really triggered the work I'm doing now. Because I realized that you can listen to a construction site, basically. You can just stand and listen to a loud construction site and sort of hear it like an orchestra. There's a high, beepy percussion thing going on there, and there's a low drone, and there's something that suddenly makes a sound. And, it just becomes a kind of a very interesting, complex layering of sound, rather than just a horrible noise. So that was very formative for me, I think. Okay, yeah. The meaning of it really is that I am the person's shadow. And I'm just thinking about the walk I did with the person as I walk by myself. So what I'm not doing is performing with the environmental sounds. I would hate to do that. Even I mentioned earlier the vocal strolls. When I sing with a construction site, I'm not kind of thinking, oh, this construction site will be such a beautiful backing for my voice. You know, it's not that. It's not a sort of diva thing at all. It's really just I'm trying to be part of the environment, like a bird, you know, that I might be responding to sounds I'm hearing, or I might just be, you know, making my own sounds as a bird does within that environment. And with the shadow walks, of course, there's the extra thing that I'm really trying to think of the person. So that can have many different ways of showing itself through my vocal. It might be the sound of the person's voice. You know, some people have really distinctive voices, or when I've done this in Ireland several times, and there's sort of a lovely lilt to people's voices. I didn't want to copy, you know, the way that the Irish speak. Obviously, that would be, you know, horribly banal of me. But the idea of the movement of the voice as we walk. Or it might be more of an emotional thing. You know, some people's walks are very emotional because they're taking me to maybe where their grandparents used to live and they went as a child, and they're remembering being a child and games they would play with their grandparents, or they're feeling sad about the fact that their grandparents aren't alive anymore. And so it's sort of that, you know, that reflects through what I sing. But I'm not very consciously doing it. I'm really trying to be as open as possible and just sort of let what sound occurs just happen. And I'm not by any means trying to sing beautifully at all. You know, a lot of what I sing is quite ugly. It's just whatever comes up, really.
Walking down School Lane, passing the old school, which has now been converted into a house. There is a new school elsewhere in the village. Beautiful early spring activity on trees and bushes and some of the gardens here as we move out of the village habitation. Loads of daffodils, of course. What I'm looking at half a mile in front of me is forest, hills and sheep, lots of sheep. Complete marsh not so long ago.
your question. So, okay, so what does Viv Corringham sound like? Yeah. Well, I think that, it's not one thing. And I think probably as you go through life, you realize how many different strands of yourself there are. Which I think is fine. And every so often, I'll try and bring them all together, and then I'll kind of let them separate again. So there is the me that is still singing songs, I like songs. I've got nothing against songs. I like a melody. So I still let myself do that. But I guess what I do in shadow walks, as I said, is very much about the root of the person. So as I'm walking along, I will remember perhaps, that we turn a corner and they said, just over there was my school. I'll remember that. Now, I'm not going to sing those words, but that will just be, a sort of, it'll be just something that kind of occurs and will make me respond with some kind of vocal. Also, I sing with a lot of different improvisers, musical improvisers, and some are more towards the melodic and some are very much the opposite. I use electronics as well. So sometimes, I just want to be an instrument or I want to be a machine. I don't really want to sound like a singer, because one of the problems of being a singer is that humans are hardwired to tune into the voice. We can't help it. That's just how we are. I don't want to be the focus. With a group, I don't really want to be the focus. And I try so many things. I stand at the end, I stand at the back. It doesn't really work because people want to focus on a human voice. So I've tried to sort of change my voice through electronics so it sounds more like an instrument or a machine. And I've tried to make more kind of guttural sounds that are not, not in any way singerly. It kind of doesn't work, I have to say. It sort of doesn't matter what you do. And so I'm kind of accepting that these days. I can make all the machine noises and all the instrument noises I want. But, I'm not going to get away from the fact that I'm a vocalist. And so I just accept that. And I think when I'm performing, I allow all the aspects of what I do to come in. So there might be a melodic bit. Now, this probably doesn't sound very startling to any of your listeners, but when I started in improvised music, which was in the 1970s, it was really taboo to introduce any element of melody, and even rhythm was a little bit dodgy. So you had to be really careful then that you weren't doing anything melodic, especially if you were new like me, and I'd come from rock music, so I kind of, I had a lot to learn. And now, of course, it's not like that at all. People bring in everything from their life, which, why wouldn't you? You're supposed to be free and open, so why wouldn't you bring in all the aspects that have influenced you? And as I say, as you go along, there's more and more things that have influenced you. So just before I turned 50, I went back to college, actually, and did an MA in sonic art. And that, of course, changed me as well. And that kind of gave me a freedom and a mentor. And that was really wonderful because I'd had the freedom before, but I hadn't had any kind of guidance. And it was just so great to say, I want to do this, but maybe I'm crazy. And they would go, well, you should read this book and you should listen to this. And, just that thing of finding a context. I think you kind of need a context.
Loads of wildlife. Oh, pussycat. Common customer. Well, when I say wildlife, I mean flowers. At this point, we hit the main road. In the south of the village. Tables outside various houses selling home produce. I always like to support that sort of thing. The old Bethesda Chapel, built in 1852, turned into a house. about 8 years ago. Oh, here's a landmark. It's the local bus stop and shelter. You get a bus from here on a Wednesday morning, takes you into Oswestry and brings you back early afternoon. And similarly on a Saturday. And that's it for local transport services. You need a car. Good food and ales available, but not right now. Back up to St Cillin's Church. I suppose St Cillin would qualify as a minor saint in the overall picture of sainthood. And just outside there is a well. It's now a drinking fountain. It gets dressed as a well once a year. The local tradition carries on. By way of a coda, I'll finish this by telling you that last summer there was a benefit gig in this church to raise money for its restoration. There's a concert put on by a musician called Uli John Roth, who was a member of Germany's most famous hard rock band. It started in the 60s and I think they're still going in some form. He was a member of that band in the 70s, but he's a Landslin resident, curiously. I think he lives somewhere else as well, but he's definitely, not that I've seen him here, but I have a friend who's a piano tuner who's been in and tuned his piano and seen his so-called sky guitars. Because what Uli John Roth does very successfully, he tours the concert halls of the world with his guitars and pedals, playing electric guitar interpretations of Vivaldi and Bach and the like. And he's mega successful. And he played in this church last summer. The tickets were very expensive, but I didn't fancy it anyway. But I was curious enough to come down with Malarkey and stand amongst the old yew trees outside while the concert was going on, just to hear what I could hear. And I think 10 minutes was enough, and we walked on. But people who I know went were very satisfied customers. All a question of taste, innit? And this is where we started. So this is where we'll finish.
At one time, I would have said language really had no part in my work, maybe 20 years ago. And language, I'm coming back to it, gloriously. I love language now. I use it a lot. I don't necessarily use it in the usual way. I like it when one phrase jumps out, because I like that feeling that might stir something in the listener. But there's no real sense to it, So I'm in a band at the moment called Time Trout, and we improvise, but we have quite a rhythmic drummer, so it kind of sounds like songs, which is weird, because after a gig, people will come up and go, "Oh, that song about the little blue car," and I think, what are they talking about? Because I don't remember. Basically, I go in with a pile of text, which I basically steal. I probably shouldn't say this live on radio. I steal mainly from visual artists. It has to be said. One of the things I love, I went to art school for 5 years and I kind of love visual art still. So I go to a lot of exhibitions and I'm very glad that a lot of artists are using text, are using language. And I often borrow bits. So that a lot of the text I have will be words I maybe wouldn't have thought of. I don't particularly want to write autobiographical text. That wouldn't interest me at all. But I love things, by other artists. And I use an extract. I won't decide in advance what I'm going to use. I'll just have it there, and it'll be whatever pops up. So, for example, with the band Time Trout, I had some words that were saying stuck like, but the photograph I'd taken stopped there. So the next sentence didn't follow on at all. So I'd sung stuck like, and I had to sort of look along. And then I saw Jane Austen, right in the middle of it. Someone had been writing about Jane Austen. So I sang Stuck Like Jane Austen, and that's actually become, that became a track, and also it's become the title of our new album, which I can plug on your show. It's a Otto Roku download. So it's Cafe Otto's own label. Cafe Otto is a venue in London. But so Stuck Like Jane Austen, so that's a very good example of what happens where I'm just like looking for a word. I'm trying to sort of make a weird kind of language that sort of makes sense but doesn't really.
Why are they? Why impeccably organized. Why we are stuck. We are stuck like Jane Austen. Stuck like Jane Austen. It makes us feel humble. Yeah. Is it too late? Is it too late? When did you cease to meander? But you could be a distribution center. Databanks. Distribution center. Centers. Ironically, what's it? Fraction of a people. And aside, like man. Constellation like this. A remote were they first to escape Like a refugee camp.
Noise and silence, yeah. I think they're very important, especially silence. I think silence is often avoided. I really think it has a big part to play. I mean, radio is a wonderful example of that, isn't it? Dead air is terrible, isn't it? You know, if you leave 5 seconds and you don't make any sound, then that'll be terrible for the listeners. You know, we're always told that on Resonance, so you have to kind of keep it moving. And people kind of have that attitude in life as well. You know, I think one thing really that I learned from Pauline Oliveros was the importance of silence. And when you listen to her work, you can really feel it there, that silence should be as important as the sound you're making. You know, in fact, you can think of different lengths of silence, you know, in the way that you'd think of a different block of sound. And that was the exercises that she had us do, or the sonic meditations. The often silent part is really important. And it, you know, obviously it casts light on, it's a very visual way of saying it. I can't think of a sonic way of saying cast light on. It casts light on the sound as well. You know, it makes the sound sort of more significant in a way, because you've decided to do that and then stop. And one of the problems with improvised music is that noodling on. You know, and when you begin as an improviser, that's what you do. You just keep going. Once you start, you keep going. You know, I better not stop because I might never start again. We've all done that. And that thing of just deciding to make a sound now and then stop, and just stop and listen. You know, that's really what silence is good for. Listen to what's happening around, you know, because the place you're in, the place you're making the sound, also has its own sound. It's doing something to the sound you make, you know, so listen to the building, and that's like another performer. As for noise, I mean, the old phrase that noise is just unwanted sound, I would say, why don't you want it? You know, what are you going to do with noise? I mean, I like noise as a musical thing. I enjoy that. But often when people say, oh, you know, it just sounds like noise to me, I want to question that, you know, so why don't you want it then? Why do you think it's noise and not just sound? And what are you going to do with all this noise? Because, you know, we can't close our ears, so it's coming in anyway. You know, people often will say, well, I don't want to learn listening. When I'm teaching deep listening, you know, there'll be sometimes people go, well, but if I start listening, all I'm going to hear is the traffic, you know, because it's just noise. And my answer really is, well, you're going to hear it anyway, and it's going to affect you. It's going to vibrate you, your body, you know, it's going to vibrate your bones. It's having an effect. So isn't it better that you're conscious of it? Because also we have some control over this idea of noise pollution. You know, it's in our own hands, really. There's machines that make loud noises that don't need to. Things could be altered if we wanted them to be, but first we have to notice them if we listen. And we can only listen if we're not just going, oh, noise. So I guess that's my my response to what do I think about noise.
I'm walking in the desert, in the Gulf Desert in Abu Dhabi, in an island that is called Saviat. Around me there is only sand in a very modernist looking campus. In the desert, I think about the walk. One of the walks that I wish I could do the most is the walk in Montreal at the moment. My house before coming here was in Montreal. I moved there recently, and I remember walking in the park from my home to the subway station, and I really loved the big trees and the maple trees surrounding this park, which was Laurier Park. And I remember listening to music while I was walking most of the time, or sometimes just by listening to birds that were in that park. It's not necessarily a good silence, because not necessarily I hear birds all the time. Sometimes I hear some machines that are part of the construction. And sometimes the wind of the desert that basically is so fast and so strong. I wish I could walk at the moment also in Brooklyn, when I was always lost, because Brooklyn is a huge maze, an amazing, beautiful maze. I miss getting lost. I miss the sound of the train sometimes, that it was so horrible and bad, before, and now they seem like they can be a great strong sound that I can get lost into.
I've got to the age where I feel that I probably have, I've done what I'm going to do, and I'm obviously going to keep exploring and trying to push it further. But I don't have that feeling I had in my early 30s that, I don't know what I'm doing, and, it's like it's all a bit of a mess and chaotic. And I sort of feel like, I know the work I like to do, and I'm going to press on doing it for as long as I can. And I've been working since the 1970s, so, it's a long time. I've been working for 50 years, basically, plowing this weird course that's taken me off in various directions. I started out singing, actually, when I was 16, because my parents bought me an acoustic guitar for passing some exam or something, and I wanted to be a guitarist, and I soon realized I was horrible on the guitar. I was terrible, and the only way I could make it sound halfway decent was to kind of sing songs with it. So I sort of started singing folk songs, really, in folk clubs. That was the time when it was quite revolutionary to sing folk songs. It was like the whole reprise of the folk song movement, and it was quite political. And then there were women's bands came along in the early 80s, and I was singing with them, and that was more post-punk. So I was doing kind of regular kind of singing. And then it sort of changed. I moved to London after I finished college, and I started to go to the London Musicians Collective, which was a collective of improvising musicians. And that was just, that just blew me away, really. Because, wow, the things I can do with my voice, I'd never even thought of. I don't have to sing songs. Look what a voice can do. And there were some great singers there, like Maggie Nichols. I went to one of her workshops, and, she was just... There were a lot of people at that time doing Free Your Voice workshops, and I kind of went to as many as I could because I hadn't really thought of using voice in that open way where it's more an instrument and you're just seeing what the human voice is capable of, which is a lot. That took me into improvised music, where I still am. I still, work with improvisers, and I'm still in bands, actually, even at this age. I love it. I love playing with other people, and I love improvising. But then a couple of things happened, and I can't quite remember. I think it was more sort of the 1990s this happened, where I met Pauline Oliveros for the first time, heard her play, was very interested in what she was doing, and I went to one of her deep listening workshops. And from then on, my thinking changed. As I was saying, I started really kind of listening to the environment, in a much more focused way. And then wondering how I could be part of that, because I kind of, I still wanted to sing. So what I started to do was something I called vocal strolls. And I just heard about binaural microphones, which are the ones you can wear in your ears or near your ears and are very discreet. So you can really walk through the environment, especially London, where I was living at the time, and sing, and people don't really notice. You don't sing very loud because the mics are so close. And I would sing with the sounds. So I would spend time, at a construction site or, in the underground, just singing with sounds that I heard. And that was just, I loved doing that. And I had a program on Resonance FM, which had just started then in London. It's like it was an art radio, which it's still going strong, actually. I had a weekly program where I did that. So that was great. So that was how that kind of came to be. Plus, their radio station also changed my life a bit, because I started to hear work by electroacoustic composers who were working with environmental sounds, like Barry Truax, Hildegard Westerkamp. And I loved their work, and they were using kind of much more sophisticated gear than me. But I wondered if there was a way I could combine what they were doing, which was about really place, the individual in the place, other people's sense of place, with sound and the environmental sound and what I could offer to that. And I thought maybe singing with the environment and making work that involved voice and environmental sound was a way to go. So that's that I started doing a project that I called Urban Song Paths, and there's a long history of the song path, which probably I won't go into right now because it would take too long. But what that led me to, after many walks, where I was following lost rivers of London, particularly the Fleet, which goes obviously down Fleet Street. And I did that walk, singing it, and I was also reading some texts about the fleet and how it used to be, which was pretty gruesome, actually, which is people used to throw in, the offal of the animals that they were killing in the abattoirs, and it was a pretty smelly river as far as I can gather. But nevertheless, I was following that route and singing my impressions and sort of ideas about it, and, reactions to the sounds I was hearing. And I must have done that walk 30 or 40 times. And what happened after that was what set me off doing shadow walks, because I found that I was nostalgic for the walk. When I stopped doing it, I realized it had become my walk. I had an attachment to that walk and the sounds on that walk. And I really found that very interesting. And so I wondered if other people had the same thing, if they did a regular walk, if they became attached to it. And so I started this project that has gone on now for 20 years called Shadow Walks, which is where I go to different places. And I'd love to come to Argentina. If anyone would like to invite me.
You are invited when you want.
Well, thank you very much. I'd love to. Yes, so I go to different places, and one of them was Mexico, where I met Amanda Gutierrez, who we both know, who took me on a walk. And I've been to, I think, about 26 countries and done shadow walks. So the idea is that people who live there, or who have lived there, take me on a walk that has some meaning for them. And we walk together, and I record us as we walk. So we just chat. It's not an interview. It's just a chat. And they take me, along the route. And then when we've done that, I go back later. I listen to the walk, and I try to think, about how it was meaningful for that person. Then I go back alone, and I record myself singing my memory of the walk. So it's like, in a way, I'm trying to sing the shadow of the person who took me on the walk. And that was a rather long-winded way of answering your question about what sounds I search for, because with that, I'm not choosing the walk and I'm not really searching for any particular sounds. I'm just trying to repeat the walk I went on with the person. And then in the end, when I make the shadow walk, it combines the original walk with the person, my solo walk where I sing, and the environmental sounds.
I think this is a walk that I will miss once I leave this country and once I leave this island. I don't miss it yet, but I think it's memorable. There is something about the birds, there is something about the echo that claims some kind of innocence. And walking here, when I feel the most lonely and the most defeated through this pandemic, it makes me regain faith, not necessarily in humanity, but in nature. That nature will prevail even after humans are gone, and the humans have to learn a harsh lesson about surviving. And I think this is the best place to be. The echo of my steps, my whole presence. Reminds me of what I should miss.
Can I tell you about my new project? So this year, 2023, on the first Monday of every month, I go out and I take a walk and I record myself singing or talking or kind of doing anything I want to do, really. And then I'm kind of processing the recording a little bit. So I am putting it through a few little electroacoustic things, a little time stretching or a bit of layering of voices, just very minimal. So it just goes through another process. So this is like the new version of vocal strolls that I did 20 more years ago, which is still responding to the environment, really. So this is just the first two. We're just very freely drifting, wherever my feet took me and recording. But this one, this month, was going back to my idea of the Lost River. And I mentioned the Fleet in London, and I started to wonder if New York had some, which it does. So I followed the route of the Minetta Brook, or the Minetta Creek, which is underground and goes through Greenwich Village and West Village. So that was more a narrated walk. So this is very interesting because I like putting little rules for myself sometimes. The first Monday of the month, wherever I am, I'm going to take a walk and record it. And I call that Sound Walkscapes. It's not best title, but it'll do for now.
Of when I'm going to depart. I don't know. I don't know when I'm going to depart. I'm not sure if I will be here this month, next month, and I'm start deleting the blur lines of what means to be home.
No, I think it's great you're doing these programs. That idea of respecting the sound and respecting the interviewee is very important. And I was thinking about the listeners, I kind of hope they get inspired by it, and also that they realize you don't have to be too precious about your work. Sometimes it goes wrong, it doesn't always turn out well, but the process of making it is what's important, really, and you just have to keep going. Most of the time people won't be very interested in what you're doing, and you won't have a lot of success, and you won't get on festivals that you'd like to be on. And I remember Pauline saying this, and really you can either just feel really resentful and stop making work, or you can go and make opportunities for yourself and include other people in that. Just go for it and don't worry about whether what you're doing is any good or not. It won't be any good at first, but it'll get good. Or it'll get satisfying. Who knows what good is anyway? I don't understand it myself. But you'll make work that satisfies what you're trying to do, and that's really, I think, all we can hope for.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was a very nice experience. Thanks a lot. Bye.
El ruido
es el mensaje.
Vamos por más, dice la rana, escúchame, ¿eh? Esto recién empieza.